We're using their spare labor.
Exactly.
I'm assuming, that might make an ass out of you. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Bay Area stats.
Well, what happens when you say, I presume? Then you make
presume instead of assume?
Yeah. Welcome to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Here's our format. A bunch of guys sitting around a bar. There's no bar. Having drinks. There's no drinks either. But we're talking business, and you, the audience, are listening in. The Best of Investing is actually a radio show that has been around since August 2010, and it airs every Saturday on Fox News Radio, 9:10 a.m. at 1 p.m. Now, we're not a political show. We're strictly business, so everyone will be happy with that. Remember, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome. You're listening to the Best of Investing on News Talk 910. This is the show where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. For those of you listening for the first time, here's our format. A few guys, in this case just a couple of guys, because a couple of our co-hosts couldn't make it today, sitting around a bar, talking business with you, the audience listening in. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm pleased to have as my co-host, Mark Hanf. And today's trivia theme is, get ready, cartoon animals.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you love that. You like that one? Okay, you're going to do well on this one. Our website is bestofinvesting.com, and we're also on television, Comcast Channel 26 on Saturdays at noon and Sunday at 6 p.m. And Mark, you know what? We're going to kind of get into what the email theme is, because people have been asking, exactly what are deeds of trust? And then I'll chime in with the kind of story that I came in with.
For those of you who may not be familiar with what a hard money lender does in this marketplace today, is we essentially lend out other people's money mostly to real estate investors. We're kind of filling that market niche that the banks don't really fill right now, which is making loans to real estate investors.
Yeah, a lot of people realize how hard it is to get a loan from a bank right now.
Yeah, unless you're buying a home. Now, if you're buying a home, of course, the banks are making great loans right now. What, 3 3/4 you can still get a bank loan for? And so the banks are really focused on making consumer home loans. So if you want to buy a home for your primary residence, absolutely, there's Wells Fargo, Chase, Citi, they're all out there, making those loans. And but if you want to buy investment property.
Yeah, because some of those deals out there are pretty good.
Yeah.
People are saying, well, I don't want to move from my house, but I'd like to invest in some investment property.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're looking to leverage your savings to buy investment property, or maybe you want to buy fix and flip, or maybe you own commercial or rental property already and you want to pull some cash out to do whatever you want with it, the banks pretty much, you go to the bank and ask for a loan on your apartment building. It's
Wait, do that again. Oh boy!
Thank you for sharing. No. So the hard money lending industry, or private money lending industry, and again, it's referred to both ways. It's really the same thing. So private lending, hard money lending. I'm going to use it interchangeably today, but that industry over the last 5 years, since the whole market meltdown and the whole subprime market meltdown, a lot of new companies sprung up to serve the demand for capital by real estate investors and other people that the banks aren't serving.
Yeah, but even though you're a fairly new company, like 5 years old, that's not really that relevant, because you've had a lot of experience for a long time.
I have
in real estate, so it's
30
not
years
like
experience in real estate.
I mean, so
I'm an old guy.
Well, it's interesting because when we had done hard money loans years ago, our best years were in the first few years that we started. So it was kind of irrelevant that we hadn't been in the business for 25 years, because all you're doing is really matching up the loans with the money.
Right, and so again, for people who aren't familiar with what a hard money lending company does, we have two distinctly different types of clients. We have our borrower clients looking for capital, and then we fund those loans through capital from private individuals. In other words, we use the retirement savings of private individuals like our listeners out there. So if you have an IRA account or money in a savings account, if you've got an IRA account that you can self-direct, you can invest those monies. Obviously you can buy stocks and bonds, and a lot of people are doing that right now. But for those people seeking higher yields, you can fund a loan secured by real estate. And so that's the other side of the coin is we're kind of directing the flow of capital, as you will. We're matchmaking people with money who want to earn a higher yield on that money, a secure high yield, and we're matching them up with people who are looking to borrow money and are willing to pay a higher yield for the short-term use of that money. And so we're brokering that transaction.
Okay, and a good example of that is exactly what I just did with my IRA less than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was a great one. Tell the audience about that.
Okay, so the deal that I got, there is a gentleman buying a 7-year-old condo, so it doesn't have any deferred maintenance on it, in Sacramento, in a decent area. The last price was $67,000 a year ago, and he's getting to buy it for $60,000, and he needs a loan of $42,000. So he's coming in with $18,000. So it's going to be a 70% loan to value, which is not super conservative, but I figured a $42,000 first mortgage on a condo where the rent is almost $1,100 a month doesn't have too much risk associated with it.
Right.
If worse comes to worse and I have to foreclose, then I'll get to foreclose and own this thing for $42,000. And the interest rate that I'm going to get is 8%, which is secured by the real estate.
And what term is that for?
I think it's 3 years.
So for 3 years, you've got an 8%, secured return. Interest-only payments, or
no? Actually, this one is going to be amortized over. I think it's a 30-year amortization, so I'll get a little bit of principal back, and a little more conservative because the loan to value will slowly go down.
Right.
And within 3 years, he'll probably pay us off. And if he doesn't, I can talk to him about extending it at another 8% rate, or I can foreclose. It just gives a lot of options.
And again, this is investment property, not his primary residence.
Correct.
So you're not worried about having to kick a family out of their home if something happens to him financially and he no longer can afford to make the monthly payments, which in this case seems pretty unlikely, because if you're looking at, $400 a month is roughly going to be his loan payment,
Yes.
and he's getting rental income of $1,100 a month?
Yeah, and the condo fees are only about $200 a month.
Yeah.
So, it's a great, I would have loved to have been him and buy this property for $60,000, but I didn't. That opportunity wasn't given to me. The only opportunity was given to me was, how would I like to invest $42,000 at 8% interest, and if anything goes wrong, okay, well then I will get to own it $42,000.
So the person listening out there is saying, well, why wouldn't that guy go to the bank and get a bank loan to buy that investment condo? And the answer is,
he just didn't quite have enough qualification. In fact, he was making good income at his last job, and he decided to switch jobs to make more income being self-employed at a new type of profession.
so he probably qualified in, maybe let's say 10 years ago when banks were lending to everybody, he would have easily been able to get a bank loan to buy this investment condo. But in today's environment where the banks are, it seems like they're looking for reasons to say no to your application if it's not strictly a home loan purchase for your primary residence.
That's right.
There are some people out there who are probably listening going, well, I can buy investment property through my bank. Well, maybe that's because they've got great income, they got money in the bank, they don't have any glitches, they didn't change jobs. Everything is absolutely perfect, because that's really what it's got to be nowadays to get the bank to pay attention to you.
Well, here's the funny thing is I've actually talked to financial advisors who said that their clients could not get a loan even though they had $1 million in the bank because they didn't have income per se. They were drawing off of the principal, and maybe they earned, $50,000 a year from that money, but they had literally $1 million in cash, and they couldn't get a loan.
And the reason for that is, and you could thank Frank Dodd for that, because
Frank Dodd.
among the millions, it seems, of new regulations that have been passed thanks to that huge, pork barrel bill known as Frank Dodd, many of those new regulations affected the lending industry. So they wanted to make sure that the subprime and predatory lending never happened again, right?
Exactly.
And really what the effect of many of these new regulations are to take away consumer choice. And so what happened in this case, where you were just talking about a guy having $1 million in the bank and the bank can't make him a bank loan, well, that's because he doesn't have the income, the current income
That's right.
necessary to service that loan. He can't demonstrate that income. So
That's
having
right.
$1 million in the
Exactly.
bank is not demonstrating a current income capacity to make the monthly payments on a loan. And so really what you have to be able to fill in all the squares and all the numbers correctly. It really is, lending for the banks is a numbers game, whereas lending for private lenders, we can use subjective data and decide to make a loan because we can intuitively say, oh yeah, this makes all the sense in the world.
That's right, exactly. And in his case, he decided he didn't want to pay cash.
Yeah.
He wanted his cash available for something else. Okay, we're going to cut to our first commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Mark about more interesting tidbits with regard to these hard money loans, what interest rates could be had, and that sort of thing. And our theme for the trivia is cartoon animals. Okay, here's our first commercial break. Here's our first trivia
SpongeBob.
question. SpongeBob. No, there's no SpongeBob
Patrick.
in here. Yeah, Patrick. Okay.
Everything I need to know in life I learned from Patrick.
Yeah. Okay. What kinds of animals were secret and Morocco? Now you have to go back to the 1960s for this one.
Okay.
And what would happen is you'd hear, "Hey, secret, yes, Morocco." That's where the theme comes from. Okay. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-host Mark Hanf. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. And again, the theme is cartoon animals. What kinds of animals were secret and Morocco, where you would hear, "Hey, secret, yes, Morocco"?
I know I recognize that, but I can't remember that.
Okay, but give the audience your Squidward from SpongeBob, because this is a good one.
I hate all of you.
I know you don't hate the audience, but that's okay. Okay, so we're going back to the 60s. Secret squirrel and Morocco mole.
Oh,
do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, see? You have to be older than
Old.
30. Yeah, you have to be old like us to know that. Mark, when we cut to the break, we had said that we were going to tell people what kinds of interest rates and what are deeds of trust. Get into a little more detail.
Well, we started to talk a little bit about how hard money and private money lenders serve two sets of clients. They've got the borrower clients and who need the capital, and then we've got our lender clients, who are private individuals who provide their capital to fund these loans that are just like a bank loan. It's a loan that's made to an individual, but it's secured by real property. There's a recorded deed of trust that's put on the property. So there's a promissory note or a note and a deed of trust. Those are two documents that work in tandem. The note is, how much interest they're going to pay and how many payments and for how long. And the deed of trust is the security instrument that is recorded against the property so that that property cannot be sold or transferred or otherwise encumbered.
Just like when you go buy a house
Right.
and the bank has a loan on your house, you can't just sell the house without paying off the bank.
Without paying off the loan. So what many people refer to private lending, if you're a lender client, it's often called in the industry trust deed investing. So the term trust deed investing means you're providing the cash for a loan. Now it could be all of the cash for a loan. Let's say it's a $100,000 loan secured by rental property in the Bay Area. You could put up all $100,000, or maybe you put up $25,000, or maybe you put up $50,000. In other words, you could be one of 2 or 3 or 5 people putting money into a loan, or you could fund the whole loan yourself. It's done both ways very commonly, but it's called trust deed investing because your money is secured by a deed of trust. California is what's called a deed of trust state. A deed of trust is a mortgage. It's the same thing. It's that of the 50 states, some states call it mortgage. Call it a mortgage on the property, and
But there are certain rules about foreclosure that are a little different in different
Yeah,
states.
there's
That's
actually a
gonna be
difference
technical
between a
now.
mortgage and a deed of
Yeah,
trust, which
but-
isn't worth getting into. But in California, when you record a loan against a property, the instrument's called a deed of trust. So trust deed investing is the activity of funding loans secured by deeds of trust through your savings or your IRA accounts. And what's great about trust deed investing is that you can achieve, returns that, comparatively speaking, in today's market are just unbelievable. So
Sure.
whereas your saving, we all know what the savings rate is. I mean, it's about as close to zero as you can get.
Yeah.
And bonds, 4% would be a great bond return
Well, and
right
you
now.
have principal risk where if interest rates go up, usually bond prices go down, and
Right.
you have to worry about the company that's backing it. So it's got some risk.
Whereas trust deed investing right now, the average trust deed investor is getting anywhere between 8 to 10% on average in a fixed rate. So it depends, when I say 8 to 10 on average, it really depends on what the note rate that the borrower is paying. And the
Yeah.
note rate that the borrower is paying could be anywhere from 9 to 11, maybe even 12%. And so usually the investors in those loans get some, maybe 1 or 2 percentage points less than the note rate. And but still, if that's between 8 and 10%, that's a fixed rate of return. You usually receive interest-only payments, although sometimes you'll get a little bit of principal back with each payment. And the terms of those loans are usually 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years. The vast majority of loans we write today are 12 to 24-month terms. They're not long-term.
Well, even if you were to write a loan for 5 years, my guess is the borrower is going to pay you off before
Well,
then anyway.
that's exactly right.
Because the reason
yeah.
they went to you was something that happened that they couldn't go to the bank. Like in this example that I have, the gentleman won't be at his regular place of employment for 2 years steady. Then he'll be able to go to the bank and cash me out.
Or someone's doing credit repair, and sometimes
Or credit
that
repair,
takes
yeah.
2 years.
Exactly.
And so, and what's really interesting about the different investors that I would consider my regular investors, in fact, we've probably got, we've got about 300 people who are on our distribution list, meaning that they'll see funding opportunities that they can participate in on a regular basis via email. But of those people, maybe 50 are kind of regular recurring clients. And what's neat about them is everybody has a little bit different appetite. So I've got investors that say, send me only 12-month terms or less. I like the idea of being able to get back into cash, relatively
Things change in the
relatively
economy.
quickly. I don't want to tie my money up for years. I like those 6 to 12-month loans.
Well, here's the other thing is that even if you have 300 people on your list, and let's say the listening audience says, "Oh, well, gosh, I'll never get in." That's
is
not
not true.
true. That's not
It's
true
not, no.
because it's potentially possible that 250 of those people have already committed money within a deed of trust for 2 or 3 or 4 years. They're not ready to invest in another one until that loan comes due.
And I need to have hundreds of people in my distribution list because I'm at any given moment, I don't know how many people are liquid
Exactly.
and looking.
Yeah.
So it's we use that term liquid. Who's liquid and looking right now? Who's
Yeah.
liquid, meaning they have money in cash, and looking, meaning they're ready. Right now, I can invest the several hours it might take to look over the information and make a fast funding decision. Because quite frankly, in our lending market, we're usually doing fairly quick loan applications or fairly quick loan fundings, meaning someone comes to us and say, I've got a short sale I'm going to buy, but it has to close in 10 days. Can you do the loan? And we'll say
Exactly.
yes, and then we'll jump on the horn with a number of our investors, start calling around and see who can pull the trigger and make a fast
And the thing
decision.
is, you're not lending in Antarctica or anything, so you
No,
know
it's just Bay Area.
Yeah, Bay Area. So you know it fairly well. And people who've been listening to the show for a long time, they know we're not an infomercial.
Right.
But I'm sure people listening are going, does this cost anything to get into these loans, or does it cost anything to get on your distribution list? And the answer is no.
No, it isn't. But what I was go on to say, I talked about some of the guys that love 12-month loans. I've got appetites from investors that like 24-month loans. Some people like 36-month loans. Generally speaking, on the super short-term loans, you can get a slightly higher than average return. Maybe you'll get 10 or even 11% on a short-term loan, whereas if you are looking to maybe put your money to work for 2 to 3 years, generally speaking, we're offering slightly better interest rates to the borrowers. In that situation, you have your money working for you longer, and so maybe you're going to get closer to 8% on a longer term. So
And then some of your clients are, I only want to be in San Francisco, or I
Right.
don't want to be in San Francisco.
Exactly, or they'll lend all over the Bay Area, or but don't send me anything in Sacramento, or I love Sacramento, or Central Valley. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, so it's all over the map. And we're going to cut to our second commercial break, and we'll be right back. Catch the fly.
You want to catch a fly?
Catch the fly. Ooh, that was
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
Wow.
You've got my ears on
Let it
that.
roll.
Okay, you guys ready? And away, away,
go.
Welcome. You're listening to the Best of Investing on News Talk 910. If you've been listening to our show for a while, you know it's where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. For those of you listening for the first time, here's our format. A few guys sitting around the bar having drinks without the drinks, talking business with you, the audience listening in. And I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm pleased to have as my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money, California's fastest growing private lender, and Robert Schiff of RPM Mortgage.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Today's trivia theme is, where did they come from? You'll understand when you hear the questions. Our website is bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube by typing Best of Investing Radio Show. And we're also on television, Comcast Channel 26 on Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 6 p.m. And Robert, you had some excellent articles to discuss with us today.
Well, I had an argument with someone a couple of weeks ago about the government bailout of the auto industry, and we both realized that neither of us really had any facts as to what really happened. So
It was just a motion?
Cars for Clunkers?
Yes, yeah, Cars for Clunkers. So I've been reading a book by somebody that's in the administration and totally involved in all of it, and it's just fascinating for all the personalities that went into this and all the thought that went into it and how big it was and how nobody really knew what was going on and how it would end up. And
How did it end up?
Well, we're not there yet.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the end of the script.
No. They were banning about the possibilities of bankruptcy for General Motors and Chryslers and to bail them out and whether to bail them out. And you'd spend government money, which means taxpayers' money, and then
Yeah, but they had that back in the late 70s, early 80s where...
Chrysler.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember telling my dad, I go, they're not going to let Chrysler go out of business. There's too many employees.
Well, they were very close to letting Chrysler go out of business this time. In fact, they got to the point very close that they saw the only viable way to make General Motors successful was to let Chrysler go bankrupt or for General Motors to take over part of Chrysler. And what amazes me, one step back from all that insider information, is how suddenly, 2 years later, Chrysler was making these fabulous cars, General Motors was making fabulous cars, and apparently they are good cars and good value.
Didn't they pay back those loans already?
Well, Ford never got a loan. Chrysler has paid back most of their loan, and General Motors hasn't, and the government owns a bunch of stock, and if it ever gets up to, I think, $35 a share, they can sell out and get their money back, but of course they couldn't sell out because then it would depreciate
Oh, yeah,
the
they
value.
have too many shares of that.
Yes,
I
yeah.
wonder what percentage they own.
I think it was, well, I just saw that I think it's about 30%.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they
15%.
can't sell 30%.
So that'd be an example of
They-
a
they-
success story of government intervention. I mean, wouldn't it? I mean, as
Yeah.
opposed to if we got into a conversation about bailing out the banks, I think I might have another point of view
Well,
on that
no, wait a minute,
one.
because some of the
Well,
banks
that-
paid their money back, too, with interest, didn't they?
Well, AIG, the insurance company too, and
Yeah.
they had to act so quickly, and the ramifications. I mean, if General Motors went down, that would be so many people would be on unemployment, so many people would lose their houses. The spread of that tidal wave would be huge.
I mean, a bailout, to me, means that money is given but not paid back. I mean, really, all it was a loan.
Yes,
And
yeah.
that's okay. I mean, the government has SBA loans, too.
But they were worrying that they might, it was amazing figures. General Motors and Chrysler were losing $1 billion a month. I mean, I could never figure
Pocket
out.
change.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is it, a
Exactly.
billion here, a billion there? Eventually, it'll
So
be real money.
yeah, that's what Congress says.
Eventually, it's $1 trillion.
That's it. I'll worry when it gets to a quadrillion.
So, and then I watched the debate, and I couldn't quite figure out who was saying what by the time it was over. So,
Yeah, we had that debate this. Well, you have to read the news the next day to be told who won.
Yeah.
Because I watched it too, and it wasn't really obvious to me that anybody won. I mean, it's just, you watch the TV and their lips are moving, and it's almost like when you talk to your dog and all your dog hears is blah 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 spot, blah 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 spot.
I don't know. I was watching episodes of Father Knows Best.
Oh, that was much better timing.
I just can't
Yeah.
get into.
Yeah.
Seriously, I just could not even watch these debates.
I was going
can't
to,
either.
and I could not watch it. Here's three of us saying that, and yet everybody was glued to their TV to watch what I just didn't get it. There was nothing coming out
Well,
of that.
isn't it kind of funny too how each side, when the Democrats and the Republicans are sitting, their supporters are watching, and they're both saying, "Oh my gosh, our candidate won."
Yes.
I mean, how could it be? At least at a football game, you can kind of see the score. Maybe they should do that. They should have a tally. Like, don't they do that?
Well, they
on-
did have some kind of graph thing going
Oh,
on. I mean,
yeah.
I was at
The
a
little
hotel watching it
meter.
on CNN, and everybody in the bar, hotel, lobby thing was like glued to the TV listening to these guys, and I was half listening, but I was actually looking more at the mechanics of the on the TV screen that had this little graph thing that was different colors depending on who was measuring their
But-
responses to who was
But
talking.
unless you're wearing an
Was-
EKG, you know where it's
Was
measuring.
this
I was-
from people calling in or?
Yeah.
I don't know what I think. I'm sure they had a test audience that was like wired up.
Something, yeah, and if your blood pressure boils up, and that triggers it.
So that's how the unemployment got under 8%. They hired all these people to watch the debates and tweet in their responses so they
That's
could get
right. That was the
graph.
big news of the
Yes,
week is
that was-
the unemployment rate.
But wait,
went
I got a
down.
question about that. Do they count jobs that go to government? I mean, if the government hires a whole bunch of people now that they're not out of work and they're working,
I think they must have hired a bunch of people to see if the job rate was going to go under 8% or not.
well, like you
that's
said,
how it went.
7.9% was manipulated, but 7.8%
Yes,
not.
everybody knew it was going to go under 8 to 7.9, and so.
But isn't that a coincidence? It's
amazing?
at a 44-month low. It's very coincidental. It happened a month before the election.
But it is amazing that the stock market is also at a 4-year high. I mean, that must indicate something has turned around in those 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, usually the old days it used to be the stock market was ahead of the economy about 18 months. But the other thing is if you're working part-time and making much less than you used to make, you're still employed. But the problem is, how much does that affect the GDP?
Yeah.
Well, they also talk about the underemployment rate. So
Yeah,
for people
exactly.
who are working and but making considerably less, or then there's the rate that isn't measured, which is stopped looking.
They're no longer unemployed.
But,
Yeah.
but those people who stop looking, how do they live from day to day? Are they living with mom and dad, that sort of thing?
They might, or their spouse has somebody else in the family is helping support. We have someone at work, and their husband worked for Fireman Funds for 26 years and got tapped on the shoulder one day, and he was watching it happen around. Now, here's a guy in IT for 26 years, faithful to one company, and it's hard for him to find a replacement job for
After
that.
26 years, though, does he have a nice pension?
I don't think so.
Define
I don't
nice.
know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
One that exists. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right, guys, we are going to go to a first commercial break here, and the trivia.
I meant to interrupt.
Go ahead, go ahead.
At the beginning, you said I thought I heard you say we prevent valuable information. I'm
I
sure you meant
almost did.
present.
Yes, I almost did say that. And I
Prevent
caught
valuable
myself.
information.
Yeah, we don't worry. We don't prevent valuable information. Okay, here's our first trivia question. And again, the theme is where did they come from? So, Steve Young from the 49ers, right? We all know that. But what NFL team did he come from? And before that, he was with the USFL. But he went to the don't say anything. He went to the NFL. And he went to a team, then he went to the 49ers. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money and Robert Schiff of RPM Mortgage. When we got to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question, and again, the theme was, where did they come from? We all know Steve Young from the 49ers, but what NFL team did he come from? Gentlemen?
That'd be the Tampa Bay Bucks,
The Tampa Bay
who
Buccaneers.
were called the Tampa Bay Yucks back then because they were so terrible.
What did they start off, 0-13?
Well, I don't know if they had quite that bad, but
Oh yeah, they were back in '76. I think was when
Was
they
that-
first started
So
off.
he chose to sit on the bench and learn from someone rather than be with the team that was going nowhere.
But yeah,
Smart
but look
decision.
in his case, it really was a smart decision. And really quickly here, we last week we had a special trivia contest where we
yeah.
asked. Almost 70% of these are owned by women. What are they? And
earrings.
Earrings. Yeah. Actually, that probably would have been smart. No, the answer was home-based businesses. Robert, you had also some kind of interesting thing about real estate regulations.
Yes, we had notifications about I'm a mortgage broker, and we have to watch and see what different rules and regulations are coming down the pike.
You mean more coming on?
Oh,
Yeah, we don't have enough.
In addition to the 200 new
well,
ones they put
how
in?
do you think we got under 8% employment? The government hired a bunch of people to watch out to make sure
See,
the
that's what I
regulations
said. How much
are
of it was
going.
private sector and how much was
Yes.
government sector?
So what are they talking about now, bringing on board?
Well, we got notification that they're going into mortgage brokers and mortgage banks, and not so much the big banks, and
course not.
doing auditing and just being what they're looking for. Not so much. This is from an insider's point of view. They're looking not so much to make sure that there aren't mistakes, as they're looking to make money for the auditing part of the government.
Oh, so
that
they're going to
can
audit you
earn
and
their
then
salary.
bill
They
you
charge you for it.
Yes.
And even though there's nothing that they're really specifically looking for or thinking you did
Well,
anything
we
wrong.
got we got notification that if you're working in your office, make sure that every file is in a locked cabinet.
Yeah.
And if you have to go out of your office, even to the bathroom, your office has to be locked and your computer has to be shut down.
So that in case someone just shows up,
I
they
guess
have
it's
the
privacy
authority
issues.
to...
Yes. Yeah.
Well, privacy from the government? I didn't think there was
No,
such a thing.
privacy about exposed
Privacy
social
from-
security numbers or
yeah.
credit
Privacy
reports.
I thought it was in case the feds came in to make sure they don't look at your
Oh,
computer.
that's interesting. Privacy from the government.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
the-
exactly.
That's the new policy.
Well, it's sort of like in some of these counties where the fire marshal, one of the things that they did was they said, okay, you have to have a 5-year certification, make sure that the sprinklers are working. And they realized, we're not making enough money from this, so we're going to do it annually. Then they go, well, we're still not making enough money, so now they have to do it quarterly. Soon it's going to have to be hourly. I mean, you got to get those pensions up, right?
Yeah, they'll have to have well, let's see, you have more than 3 employees, so you have to have somebody from the fire department full-time with you to check and make sure that all the sprinklers are working.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Robert, are you familiar with that? This week there was the article about the new banking settlement and some of the new regulations taking effect there. I read all I read was as far as 200 new regulations that are now going to be implemented for like the top big 5 banks, and that's all I could stand. My eyes just glazed over right away. I got depressed.
No, I haven't seen that, but that's very interesting because a realtor told me just about an hour and a half ago that they have a deal that's ready to close, and it's a short sale. And of course, the short sales are the ones that take months and
Long.
months and months
Yeah.
and months. In fact, we all call a normal sale. We say it's a short sale, no, and then say, oh, it's going to be a quick sale.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyhow, they're after months and months and months of everybody finally getting everything approved and ready to close the deal, the seller got notification from B of A that said, oh, that $475,000 second that you have, that you're upside down on, well, we'll cancel that for you.
Wow.
They're canceling the second, which makes him underwater, and so now he's not underwater, and now he doesn't want to go through with the sale, and nobody knows what's going to happen.
Oh, wow.
Except the
Well, that's
lawyers
interesting.
will start making money. But there's an indication that B of A is one of the big 5 and one of the ones that was forced to try to help people out from the, and most of the loans they got from Countrywide. So here's an indication that they are trying to work to save houses from going into foreclosure or short sales.
And this is one of the reasons why most real estate experts are predicting no second wave of foreclosures, and that the so-called shadow inventory is not going to be dumped on the market because of reasons like this. There's an awful lot of banks are coming in with new programs like, quite frankly, relief of debt.
Well, in that case, though,
Cancellation
they
of debt.
must have had the first and the second.
I'm not sure
Probably.
that they probably did.
In that case, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess
otherwise
in theory,
it wouldn't benefit
it would
them.
exactly. But if potentially though, if you have a very large first, they could just get rid of some of the debt on the first.
That was the idea, I thought, from the
Yeah.
government initially, to which would make sense. Let's get something to make sense that the banks will lose less
Less.
money than they would if it went into foreclosure.
Right. So
And so maybe actually after all this time, they're actually finding plans that make sense all the way around.
Well, and foreclosure is not inexpensive. It's cheap, and it's involves a lot of different processes, and there's costs, and certainly the cost of the homeowner losing their home. So, I mean, we talked a few weeks ago about how Chase was sending out letters unilaterally restructuring their loans and
So
lowering
they were
interest rates.
They were being proactive. They weren't waiting
Exactly,
for people to
right.
come back.
Forced by the
Well,
government.
they're forced by the government, yeah.
Oh,
to do
okay.
a certain percentage
Right,
of
it's
their
all
loans.
political, right?
Yes.
Politically motivated, certainly, but not necessarily in a bad way. Because again, if it prevents people from being kicked out of their homes, that's not a bad thing. Of course, if you're a real estate investor waiting for more foreclosure inventory,
Then it
that's
is,
not
sure.
good news.
Yeah.
But again, hey, let's
But
be
it helps
socially
to-
conscious a little bit here.
Well, it's funny. Years ago, my mom got a letter from whoever her first mortgage was, but to be proactive. But in that case, interest rates had gone up so much, and her interest rate was so low. They said, "Why don't you pay off your loan?"
Oh,
Oh, back when interest rates were 12 and some
Yeah,
people had
yeah,
4.75.
You only have
yeah.
6% interest. Why don't you pay that off? We'll even give you a new pen if you pay it off early.
Oh gosh.
All right, guys. Tell you what, we're going to take a short break here. Okay, the second commercial break. Again, the trivia theme is, where did they come from? We all know Babe Ruth was traded from the Boston Red Sox to the Yankees, right? Mm-hmm. But which team did Ruth start with? It was not the Cleveland Spiders, by the way. That was Cy Young. It also was not the Brooklyn Bridegrooms. Oh, there's lots of weird teams. Yeah, the Louisville Colonels, the Cleveland Spiders, all kinds of crazy things. Okay.
Bridegrooms.
The Brooklyn
Brooklyn
Bridegrooms,
Bridegrooms.
and then they were the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers, and then they shortened it to the Brooklyn Dodgers. Okay, but none of those answers are correct. Okay. This is
Just know a
a
bunch of
normal team.
interesting-
And we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money and Robert Chip of RPM Mortgage. Can tell the players without a scorecard. Okay, now our trivia question for the second commercial break was: we all know Babe Ruth was traded from the Boston Red Sox to the Yankees, but what team did Babe Ruth start with?
well, I'm a Baltimore boy, and so I think that probably Babe Ruth came from the Baltimore Orioles.
That
since
is
he was
correct.
a Baltimore boy himself.
Well done.
Very good. Not the Baltimore Ravens.
No,
they didn't have the Ravens back then.
It was the Baltimore Colts.
Yeah, that's true. I was a big Johnny Unitas fan.
I'm still enjoying what you talked about. The Dodgers, name Dodgers came from the Brooklyn Trolley
Dodgers, because the people used to
Trolley Dodgers.
dodge
We were
the
talking
trolleys.
about off the air about what was a trolley Dodger? I guess a jaywalker at that time.
Yeah, that's true.
Huh.
And I guess if they got hit, they were
fleet-footed trolley dodgers.
yes.
Sounds like a bird.
And I guess they weren't the Brooklyn roadkill. I guess they were able to get successful in avoiding it. Okay, we're going to get right into email time here. Mark, the email we received for you was: do you charge a fee for investing in your deeds of trust?
No.
Okay, next question.
Loans largely to real estate investors who can't get loans from banks. And those loans are just like a bank loan. They're secured by real estate. There's they're mostly first deeds of trust. Oftentimes they're purchase money first deeds of trust. They're funded by private individuals. So we've got actually quite a few, well over 100 private lenders in our database that are kind of our go-to people. They're Bay Area residents who have savings, and they like investing in loans secured by real estate. So they're basically funding a financial instrument, and it's known as in investing circles as trust deed investing. So what effectively trust deed investing really is you're funding a note secured by a instrument known as a deed of trust, which is really a mortgage. California's a deed of trust state. In California, they don't do mortgages, although people still refer to them as mortgages.
They're virtually the same.
They're virtually the same. So you're funding a loan that's secured by a mortgage on California property, and the question was, is there a fee for that? And what's really great, I think, for investors who take advantage of the ability to earn anywhere from 8 to 10% on average on their savings when they invest in a trust deed secured loan, is that it is a no-load investment. So at least it is for us. We do not charge our investors anything to invest in that loan, and in fact, we collect a wire fee because the way our investors invest in a trust deed is they actually wire the money to the title company after the borrower has already signed all the loan docs. And in fact, our trust deed investors' names are on those notes and deeds of trust. So you become the lender, or your IRA, if you're using your IRA to fund the loan, your IRA would be named on the note and the deed of trust. And so we create the loan documents, we originate the loan as it's called, and we do that because we're licensed real estate brokers in California. We're able to do that. And then once the borrower goes in, signs the loan documents, the title company says, hey, we're ready for the funds, have your lender wire the funds. Our lender then wires the funds directly from their account to the title company. The title company records the deed of trust, and the money is dispersed to escrow. So it's a very straightforward transaction. It's done. It mirrors how a bank loan with B of A or Wells Fargo or RPM mortgage would be done. It's just the difference is the money comes from private individuals.
And
Now, I remember back in the 70s, even the 60s, when people were buying and investing in real estate, the banks, and there were no mortgage banks, it was just banks, they would never lend more than 80% of the value of the property. And so there were companies like yourself at the time who would lend more. I mean, I had friends who were investing and buying and remodeling, and they would go out and they would borrow money from these other companies for another 10%. And those companies were at the time charging 10 points and 10% for a 6-month loan.
To do seconds, you're talking.
do seconds,
So they'd
yes.
go 10% behind an 80% loan for
Yeah,
a
so that
total of
90%
90%
Yes, and the
financing.
market was so strong, it was appreciating 1 or 2% a month, so they felt relatively secure, especially
Yeah.
because they were making so much money up front. But it's been a long, I mean, that industry is not a new industry.
Well, that's like the subprime industry. I mean, there is no more subprime, and that type of hard money loan doesn't really exist, at least not, I mean, there may be still people out there who might make that loan for you, but that's not
they're more
really,
like your equity partner at that point.
yeah, or loan shark.
Yeah,
at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Now, I want to quick one thing, because we may get an email on this. I want to stop it ahead of time so we can answer that.
Yeah.
You mentioned purchase money, and I think a lot of people might not know what purchase money is.
Well, if you're borrowing money to purchase property, we just generally refer to it in the business as a purchase money loan, as opposed to cash out refi. So there's really two types of loans. Either you're borrowing the money to help you buy real estate, or you're borrowing the money against real estate that you already own. And we make both of those types of loans.
Okay.
Now, up until the banks fell apart, that the mortgage banks and the bigger banks would lend up to 100%.
Oh, yeah.
All the liar loans where people would, if they could
Liar
fog the
loans.
mirror, they would get the loan, which was the
Right,
reason
the
that
stated
everything-
income liar loans.
Yes, yeah, the ninja loans they call them. No income, no assets, no job. The ninja loans.
And that's one of the reasons why.
And
they
that's
collapsed
why,
of the market.
yeah, and when it all fell apart, and now we found that the values plummeted, and there were so many foreclosures for the first few years, and interest rates came down, but people couldn't qualify for a loan, that the IRAs and savings were earning less than 1% or virtually nothing. It made the kind of industry that you have really valuable for people to look around and get a secured investment and make, 800 times more than they could having it in a T-bill, or?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, savings, of course, is incredibly important for everyone right now, and and everyone's read articles about how the us baby boomers, most of us are not on track to retire successfully, and one of the reasons is because the stock market and real estate in the last 5 years, and then interest savings rates are pathetic. So trust deed investing has become more and more popular in the last 5 years, and as Robert, you were pointing out, it's a much different business today. We're not doing seconds. We're not charging 10 points. We're really we've filled that void that the banks left when they exited the real estate investor lending market. So
So they're still secured loans. It's just
Right.
they're
and
a lot
these
more
are
conservative.
and they're on investment property versus owner occupied, because the banks right now, they've got a monopoly on owner occupied purchase loans and refi loans. I mean, that's their whole
For
industry
those
right
people that can qualify, and the qualifications for loans
That's
are
true.
really strenuous, and it's a full physical exam to go through a loan process right now.
That's saying it nicely.
Yeah, you're mentioning, but it's funny. People were talking about investing and how much savings you should have. And some people say 6 months. And I thought, gosh, if I have 40 years worth saved up, then I'm okay, right? But that's a little hard to do. Okay, Forget that. We'll forget what I just said. That's silly. All right,
I'm
Robert.
still thinking about that.
You're still thinking about that one. Of course,
I'm waiting for the punchline.
waiting for the punchline. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Robert, here's the email we received for you. Nowadays, how many years tax returns do I have to show to get a loan?
Oh, well, that's, I can't say no like you did. That's not. No. As any question in the mortgage industry, the answer is, well, that depends.
Boy, that sounds like a politician to me.
But normally, if you're salaried, you would probably want to bring in the most recent year's tax returns. But if all your income is just from W-2 employment and you don't have any outside income, then 1 year would suffice. If you're self-employed or if you have other investments, whether they're partnerships or other corporations or other real estate, then probably the most recent 2 years tax returns.
Yeah, I thought they were always at 2 years worth.
If you're salaried and it's just W-2 income, then they always go to the IRS and have you sign a form that allows them to go to the IRS and check the last 2 or 3 years just to make sure that, in fact, you don't have any side income and everything you're saying is accurate.
Of course, what if you have only worked for that company for about a year? Isn't
What's
that a little nerve-wracking?
what's amazing, and it still is true, that if you're salaried, you can be, I had clients that were salaried and they went on unemployment, they lost their job and they stayed on unemployment for 1.5 years and they got a job with another company, and all we need to see is one paycheck, and on that one paycheck they will base your income for
Wow.
a 30-year mortgage. Even if you're, say, 64 years old. So if you're W-2, and also if you're W-2, the banks will give you credit for your gross income.
Even though you can't spend your gross.
If you're
Yeah.
self-employed, they will look at your net income.
I would think that they would at least take the gross paycheck less the taxes that you have to pay.
If you're signed up for a $150,000 a year salary, that's your salary that you're qualified on. There's no
So if you cheat the
deductions.
government out of all the taxes, but as long as you're paying your mortgage, you're
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, all right. And with that, we're going to go to our third and final trivia question commercial break. We all know Barry Bonds played with the Giants, but which team did he play for just prior to the Giants? So who traded him to the Giants? And we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hanf and Robert Schiff. When we cut to the third and final trivia question commercial break, we ask this question. We all know Barry Bonds played with the Giants, but which team did he play for just prior to the Giants?
Well, he came to Sir Francis Drake
Pirates.
area from the Pittsburgh
From the
Pirates.
Pittsburgh Pirates. That is correct.
That's right. I went to Drake High School, and our mascot was the Pirates.
There you go. Mark, you were off air kind of giving us some frustration about the
Sharing a little
mortgage industry.
frustration.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a 45.
He was sharing it.
I was sharing it. Yeah, I had a 45-minute conversation this morning with a client, actually a lender client, who comes from the formerly a mortgage broker, and we were talking about some of the news this week that we talked about just a little bit earlier in one of the earlier segments about how the banking industry is just now a whole new set, like 200 new regulations are coming on board, and this is after several years of new banking regulations getting piled on to the industry as a result of the subprime meltdown. And one of the biggest fallouts of this whole mess is that you've got the independent mortgage broker, the independent loan originator, has largely been shut out of the business. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people, formerly, independent mortgage loan originators that are out of a job right now because it seems to have all now been consolidated to within the banks and a few mortgage bankers. And it's really, and what's amazing about it is if you kind of go back in history, you got Barney Frank, who, along with a number of other politicians, kind of forced the banks in the late 90s through legislation and other means to start making certain types of loans that they were avoiding making. And as a
That's what you said before, and I didn't understand that.
Well, because everybody needs to own a house.
So the government was pushing the
government was
100% financing.
No. The government was pushing banks to approve more loans to people who may not have the means to necessarily repay those loans or even afford those loans. It was basically social engineering.
Try to find a way for people that might be too poor to be able to afford a house to get them to be a homeowner, so they would join in and be middle class. Is that it, or?
It was essentially to ease the credit restrictions, so that they made it so that whole easy credit, fog a mirror, get a mortgage in the 2000s. That all started as a result of political pressure on the banks to be able to increase home affordability. The goal was to increase the percentage of people who
but then
own
the
homes.
price of the houses went up so much.
The
Well,
price
of
of
course
the
it
houses
did.
and the banks, I don't know that they needed government pressure, because they were making fortunes off of
Well, of course they didn't need government pressure.
And they mostly were sold to the government, so the banks didn't have the liability of the bad loans they were putting out.
It's all Bush's fault.
Well, this started under Clinton. This started under Clinton, so this goes way back. And so you have all of a sudden you got easy money, and easy money turned into fueling price appreciation, and then all of a sudden everybody's owning homes. But really I didn't want to get too much into the detail of what happened in terms of the housing bubble, but post bubble, then you've got that same guy, Barney Frank, who with Senator Dodd passes all this new legislation that is, basically after the horses left the barn, we're going to fix this problem and make sure it never happens again. Well, really, all they did was pass a ton of new regulations, which, among other things, ended up really destroying the independent mortgage loan originator. So that
Well, not just that, it hurt the homeowners, because there are people who really needed to get loans to save their house, and now they weren't allowed to.
Well, that's just
basically.
it. They've made it
That's
very,
right.
very difficult to make loans to homeowners. They they killed the subprime industry and passed a number of new laws to prevent predatory lending. But it's the law of unintended consequences that generally comes into effect, and that is in their zeal to protect the homeowner from predatory lenders, what they've really done is they've destroyed and removed consumer choice. So
Throw out the baby with the bathwater.
absolutely. And so now if you're looking to have to get a home loan, for example, RPM is one of the few independents out there remaining.
Well, we're a mortgage bank and
Yeah.
not a broker. And when I first joined RPM in the 90s, they were just a broker. And
Yeah.
as this started coming down, they were prescient enough to realize that they
Hey.
needed to exist. They would have to be a mortgage bank also, and not
Yeah.
just a broker.
Where do they get their money?
They have to have a bunch of money so that they can show that they're stable enough, and then they can get lines of credit from, before the bubble burst, it was Wall Street. And they got all their money from Shears and Lehman from Wall Street, and that's starting again. Otherwise, they will get their loans and they will sell them to different banks, Chase or GMAC, or primarily to Fannie and Freddie.
Yeah. So great weekend for sports in the Bay Area. Now that our show is starting to wind down, we didn't want to tell people too early to
That means
Oh.
not in. That means
Wind down for the day.
For the day. Yeah.
For the day, yeah,
We're
okay.
still, don't worry,
Yeah.
don't worry,
No,
fans.
we'll
We're still on.
We'll be back next week. But yeah, we've got the two baseball teams, the A's and the Giants in the playoffs this evening. We got 49ers about to start. We got America's Cup. They're out there sailing
Well,
around.
I like what Robert was saying off air, is that the A's, the only time that they led,
That's
the
an
division
They
was
were in
the-
first
they were
place for one day of the year, and
Oh,
that was the
the most important day.
The last day of the year.
What
That
were they,
was a great
remember, they were,
game.
13 games back.
That was a record.
Yeah.
There were 9 games out with 5 days left, I think.
Well, you had
Five games out with 9 days left.
Well, you had the
That sounds
Brooklyn
right.
in 1951. The Giants came back against the
Yes.
Dodgers, and it was just some ridiculous comeback that they had. But poor Josh Hamilton, man, he's just going to be living that thing down
That
for a
was
long
amazing.
time.
Yeah.
I think that's going to affect them throughout the entire playoffs.
Yeah, and then you got the Fleet Week. You got the Blue Angels in town.
Well, they have one day of the playoffs, which was by airtime is already over. So.
Well, that's true,
Texas, yes.
but I mean, just in
Yes.
general.
Oh yeah, through the whole off season, yes.
But like you said, you got the Blue Angels.
Blue Angels. There's a free concert going on in Golden Gate Park. I mean, it's a great weekend.
America's
for,
Cup won the Bay.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
amazing.
All kinds of stuff. So,
So traffic-wise, it's going to be very interesting.
yeah, I would not be trying to go into the city right now if I were you.
Okay. Now, did the Raiders? Did we figure out if the Raiders? Were
I don't
playing?
think
I
they're
don't
play-
know the Raiders are. I think they're away.
Niners are home. Giants are home. A's are home.
Wow, that's a lot
Wow, that's a
of
lot of
busyness going on.
sports.
Yes,
yes.
Sunday is going to be sitting on the couch watching sports all day. I'm going to get fat and lazy on Sunday and just really enjoy this little Bay Area moment.
How's your family deal with that? Are they okay with it?
Sunday is Daddy Day.
Oh, lucky! I want to come to your house.
Well, and luckily it's not, well, who knows what the weather will be, but it's not probably going to be 100 degrees like it was last week.
Well, actually,
so,
there is TiVo too, and I'm a big fan. I may actually TiVo some sports and go.
That's kind of hard. That's for me. That's kind of hard to do.
You
every
can't
time
listen to the radio. That's
Yes.
the trick.
Yeah.
Or go into a public place where they're talking about. Oh,
Don't tell me! Don't tell me!
But that, when you go watch the replay on TV and you've TiVoed, I know this happened to me a bunch with tennis, and just that 1 second where you turn on the TV before you can get to TV, and they say,
You have to hit the mute
And-
button really quick.
yeah, they say, yeah.
Wait a minute. Did you say you TiVo tennis?
Yes.
Oh, you're not well.
That's almost like TiVoing hockey or curling or.
Oh, no,
I'm
curling.
teasing. I mean, tennis is a fun sport.
When
It's-
you TiVo a football game, I mean, you can just blast through that. It's great.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
with
yeah.
commercials and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and even the time between plays. I mean, it's just, you just keep fast forward between.
That's
it's just
true.
amazing.
Then
to
you
go
miss
through.
all the talk of all the announcers.
Well, some of those guys are.
But unless you're listening to
anyway.
us, it's not interesting,
true,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
that. All right. Any last words before we have to cut out here, guys?
Well,
Well, it's going to be interesting next 30 days with the election coming up. There's going to be a lot of political
Yeah,
maneuvering.
and gas prices and all
gas
that.
prices are
the
heading
uncertainty is really stunning right now. There's so much uncertainty in the financial and other markets based on who's going to win and what's going to happen with tax planning. This whole fiscal cliff everybody keeps talking about. So yeah, it's really going to be interesting.
Well, I'm hoping next week to get an attorney on who knows about taxes. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about tax.
There's
planning.
going to be big changes in taxes at the end of the year, huge changes that for estate planning. I mean, in fact, people really should be aware
So
and
tell
start
people-
making plans.
Hear it.
before-
You heard it first on the
Yes.
Best of Investing,
Right,
right?
and so you've got the unemployment rate that went down, good for Obama. You've got stocks are up, good for Obama. Gas prices about to hit $5 a gallon,
Bad
not
for
so
Obama.
good for Obama. So all kinds of interesting
The
things.
stock
going on.
market's at the highest it's been in 4 years. Interest rates are the lowest, and the government's saying they'll stay
but I
down
hate
that way for a
$5
long
gallon
time.
gas.
Oh, that's
Makes me
terrible.
mad.
Me too. Okay, thoughts for the day. When sign makers go on strike, is there anything written on their signs? And my dad taught me how to pick out ripe avocados. He said they should be a bit soft. So if I found a hard one, I kept throwing it on the ground until it softened up. I still can't figure out why they didn't taste good. And with those words of wisdom, we ask you to tune in, or invite you, I guess, to tune in to the Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.